The blue light from her phone paints thin lines across the bedroom ceiling. It's 3:07 in the morning on a Tuesday in early December 2025, and Maya hasn't moved in 47 minutes. Her building in downtown Chicago is mostly quiet at this hour. Through the double-pane windows, the occasional taxi hisses over wet pavement. Lake Michigan is out there somewhere, black and invisible. Her radiator clicks once, twice, then settles into its low, steady hum.
"3:24 in the morning, a Chicago Tuesday. Outside, the city is a sleeping giant, all steel and concrete under a blanket of cold, dark blue. But in here, in this apartment, sleep is a foreign country. My eyes are fixed on the ceiling, tracing the faint, amoeba-like water stain above my bed. It's an old friend, this stain, a constant companion in the pre-dawn hours. Thump, thump, thump. The neighbor's bass line is a slow, steady heartbeat, a rhythm for the city's insomnia. It pulses through the floor, a metronome for my racing thoughts. My brain is already at work, running through the day ahead, a mental checklist, neat and orderly. 9 a.m., creative directors review, have to defend the new font choice. They'll call it too soft. I'll call it approachable. It's a dance we do. 11 a.m., strategy sync with the West Coast team. That means more coffee, another jolt to keep my mind sharp while there's this waking up. 1 p.m., lunch, quinoa salad eaten over the keyboard, trying to avoid dropping vinaigrette on the spacebar. Again, 2:30 p.m., project deep dive. 4 p.m., pre-production call. Each meeting is a block, a perfectly cut stone in the architecture of my day. My life feels like it's drawn on tracing paper. You can see everything clearly, the lines, the shapes, the structure, but you can't quite touch it. It's all there, perfectly rendered, but one layer removed. I'm the observer of my own schedule, a spectator in the stadium of my own ambition. Is this what success feels like? A series of well-executed tasks, a perfectly managed calendar, a water stain you know by heart. The blue light from my phone paints my face, illuminating the silent question that hangs in the air, unanswered. The first hint of dawn isn't golden or hopeful. It's a wash of flat, gray December light filtering through the blinds, turning the blue of the room into a muted, tired purple. Time to engage the autopilot. It's a sophisticated system, one I've perfected over years. The architecture of my morning is precise, a marvel of unconscious efficiency. My feet find my slippers without looking. My hand reaches for the espresso machine, a muscle memory ballet. Grind, tap, brew. The hiss and gurgle are the true start to my day, the mechanical whirring of my own internal engine starting up. There's the pre-portioned almond milk in the fridge door, right where it always is. The specific mug, the one with the chip on the rim that feels familiar in my hand. Even my bag strap is adjusted to the exact millimeter for optimal shoulder comfort during the commute. It's a series of cues and triggers, a perfectly choreographed sequence that carries me from my bed to the front door without a single conscious decision. Wake up, coffee, shower, dress, go. Each step triggers the next, a domino rally of routine. This automation is a survival mechanism. It saves my energy, my precious cognitive resources, for the real battles of the day, the font choices, and the strategy sinks. But here's the trap of a life on autopilot. When every action is a reaction to a cue, you stop being the pilot, you become a passenger. You're just along for the ride, guided by a system you built so long ago you've forgotten how to turn it off. You forget that you have the controls. The neighbor's music has stopped. The silence is now louder than the bass was. It's in this quiet, in this gray morning light, that I feel it. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor in the system. It's not a dramatic system failure. It's not an alarm bell or a flashing red light. It's more like a hairline crack. A single, invisible fracture in the smooth, polished surface of my autopilot. It's the briefest of hesitations before my hand reaches for the coffee machine. A fleeting thought. What if I just didn't? What if I used the other mug? What if I turn left out of my apartment building instead of right? These questions are whispers, easily ignored, easily drowned out by the hiss of the espresso machine and the ticking clock. This crack is the ghost in my machine. It's the part of me that's still awake, still watching, even when the rest of me is going through the motions. It's the part that stares at the water stain at 3 a.m. and wonders. It's a glitch in the programming, a quiet rebellion brewing in the subconscious. It's the recognition that the life I've so carefully constructed, this high aesthetic, high-functioning existence, might also be a cage. A very comfortable, very efficient, very beautiful cage. And the most terrifying part, the most exhilarating part. I think, just maybe, I'm starting to look for the key. Tonight, or maybe tomorrow night, I'll be back here. Lying in the dark, my forearm over my eyes, listening to the city's pulse. And I'll be thinking about that crack, wondering if it's a flaw to be fixed, or a starting point. The beginning of a manual override, the moment where the passenger remembers she's supposed to be the pilot, and finally, tentatively, reaches for the controls. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more stories from the quiet corners of our lives.
We are not living our lives. We are responding to them. Maya closed the article. She opened Instagram. She doesn't remember doing that either. But the number stayed. 66%. 2/3 of her waking hours running on autopilot. 2/3 of her days not chosen. 2/3 of her energy spent reacting to cues she never agreed to in the first place. This is not laziness. Laziness is refusing to move. This is sprinting on a treadmill that someone else controls the speed of. This is exhaustion with nowhere to rest. This is running and running and running and waking up exactly where you started, wondering why you can't feel your legs anymore. In San Francisco, 3,400 miles west of Maya's gray Chicago morning, a woman named Priya is having her own 7:03 a.m. Priya is 32. She works in product management at a tech company whose name you'd recognize. Her apartment has floor-to-ceiling windows and an espresso machine that cost more than Maya's first car. She has a Notion dashboard for her goals, a Peloton for her cardiovascular health, and a therapist she pays $200 an hour to tell her she's doing fine. She is doing fine. On paper, she's doing spectacular. But every morning, before she opens her laptop, Priya opens Twitter. Just for a minute. Just to see what she missed while she was asleep. 7 hours of the world turning without her. 7 hours of news, outrage, jokes, announcements, arguments, triumphs, disasters. She scrolls until she finds something that makes her feel something, anything, and then she scrolls past it to find the next one. She tells herself this is staying informed. She tells herself this is industry awareness. She tells herself a lot of things. The truth is simpler and harder to say. Priya is addicted to escaping her own high standards. The pattern looks like this. She opens a project brief. Her pulse quickens. The work is hard, but that's not the problem. The problem is the weight, the expectation, the voice in her head that says, "This needs to be the best work of your career, and your career so far has been pretty good, so that's a high bar, and what if you can't clear it? What if last year was your peak? What if everyone can see you're running on fumes except you?" Rue too proud to admit it. Q. Stress. She closes the brief. She opens Twitter. Her thumb scrolls. A joke about Bay Area rent. A thread about product strategy. A video of a dog learning to skateboard. Her breathing slows. Her shoulders drop. Her pulse returns to something resembling normal. Routine. Escape. Then the guilt arrives. She's been scrolling for 11 minutes. She hasn't written a single word. Her morning window is shrinking. She slams the phone down, face first, on the desk. She opens the brief again. Her jaw tightens. Reward, temporary relief, immediately followed by self-loathing. Cue, routine, reward. Cue, routine, reward. Priya doesn't call it an addiction. She calls it needing a break. She calls it getting context. She calls it staying connected. She has a dozen names for the cage she built herself. Her therapist, a gentleman named Dr. Okonkwo, asked her last session, "What do you think happens if you stop?" Priya said, "I'll fall behind." He waited. She said, "I'll forget something important. I'll miss something. Someone else will get there first." He said, "Get where?" She didn't have an answer. She still doesn't. But the question hangs in her chest, like a second heartbeat. Get where? Here is the villain of this story, and it's not Priya's phone. It's not her ambition. It is not her fear of mediocrity or her perfectionism or her tendency to compare herself to strangers on the internet. The villain is a false belief dressed up as wisdom. It wears a suit. It speaks in motivational posters and LinkedIn posts and graduation speeches. It sounds like common sense. I perform better under pressure. Say it out loud. Let it sit in the air for a moment. I perform better under pressure. Maya believes this. Priya believes this. Most of the high-achieving, exhausted 3 a.m. doom-scrollers in this city believe this. We've been saying it so long we forgot to check if it's true. What if pressure doesn't make us better? What if it just makes us faster? What if we're confusing speed with direction? What if the reason we can cassette stop running is that we read terrified of what happens when we do? In 2025, researchers finally put a name to what Priya and Maya and millions of others have been feeling. They called it autopilot depletion. Not burnout, exactly. Burnout is the result of working too hard for too long. Autopilot depletion is something else. It's the exhaustion that comes from living a life you never consciously chose. You didn't decide to check email at 10 p.m. Your laptop on the kitchen table decided for you. You didn't decide to compare your behind-the-scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Instagram's infinite scroll decided for you. You didn't decide to believe you're not doing enough. A culture that equates busyness with worth decided for you. And now you're tired. Not sleepy, not lazy. Tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix because the problem isn't your body. It's the invisible architecture of your days. Priya stares at her ceiling. Same gray December light as Maya's. Different zip code. She thinks about the project, brief she still hasn't opened. She thinks about Dr. Okonkwo's question. Get where? She thinks about her grandmother, who emigrated from Punjab in 1972 with $200 and a phone number written on a matchbook. Her grandmother worked 16-hour shifts for 20 years. She never scrolled Twitter. She never optimized her morning routine. She never once said, "I perform better under pressure." Because pressure wasn't a performance tool. It was just Tuesday. Priya's grandmother died in 2019, 6 months before the world shut down. She never saw her granddaughter's floor-to-ceiling windows. She never saw the Nespresso machine. She never saw the Notion dashboard full of goals she didn't live to witness. But she saw Priya, the summer after college, sitting on the edge of her hospital bed. She held Priya's hand with her papery fingers and said, "You work too hard at being happy. Just be happy. It's cheaper." Priya laughed. She thought it was a joke about money. Now she's not so sure. The trap is beautiful. It gleams. It has good lighting and ergonomic furniture and a 401k match. It tells you you're winning. It tells you the exhaustion is temporary. It tells you that once you get the promotion, close the deal, hit the goal, launch the product, buy the apartment, find the partner, optimize the routine. Once you do all of it, then you can rest. But the finish line keeps moving. It always moves. Because the trap isn't designed to let you win. It's designed to keep you running. Maya's espresso machine finishes its cycle. She still hasn't gotten out of bed. Priya's phone buzzes with a Slack notification. She doesn't reach for it. 66%. 2/3 of our behaviors running on autopilot. 2/3 of our lives. Not chosen. But here's the part the researchers don't put in the headlines. Here's the part Maya hasn't learned yet, and Priya is just beginning to suspect. If 66% of our behaviors are cued by our environment, then changing the environment changes the behavior. The trap is invisible, but it's not inescapable. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer triggers. You don't need a better morning routine. You need to question why you're optimizing a life you never consciously designed. You don't need to try harder. You need to stop treating your own exhaustion as a badge of honor. This is not about deleting Instagram. It is not about buying a $40 breathing app or taking a silent retreat in the desert or quitting your job to sell pottery on Etsy. It's about looking at the architecture of your days and asking a question so simple it feels almost stupid. What if the reason I can lock in isn't because I am weak, but because my brain knows this version of success is killing me? Maya's alarm rings again. 7:15. She reaches over, silences it. Her hand hovers above the phone. She doesn't pick it up. She doesn't know why. There's no revelation, no sudden clarity. Just a pause, a hesitation, a hairline crack in the architecture of autopilot. 3 seconds. Then she swings her legs over the side of the bed and stands up. In San Francisco, Priya closes her eyes. She breathes in. She breathes out. She opens the project brief. The work is still hard. The voice in her head is still there, whispering about standards and falling behind. And what if this isn't good enough? But for the first time in months, she doesn't reach for her phone. She just sits with the discomfort, lets it sit beside her like an uncomfortable guest who won't stop talking. And she writes one sentence, then another. The trap is beautiful. It gleams. It tells you you're winning. But here's what the trap doesn't want you to know. You were never the hamster. You were always the one holding the wheel. And you can set it down whenever you're ready. It happens at 3:14 in the morning, and it is not dramatic. There is no music swelling in the background, no voiceover announcing a turning point, no slow-motion shot of Maya throwing her phone into the Chicago River like she is in a coming-of-age movie. It's just her, alone, awake, staring at the ceiling again. December 11th, 2025. 2 days since she read about the 66%. 2 days since she stood up from bed without checking her phone first. 2 days of small, invisible pauses that don't look like progress and don't feel like victory. She's been lying here for an hour. Her brain is doing the thing it always does at 3 a.m., spinning through every conversation she had yesterday, every email she sent, every moment she might have said the wrong thing or missed the right one. It's a loop. It's always the same loop. But tonight, something shifts. Not a decision, not a resolution, just a question that slips through the cracks in her mental architecture, quiet and uninvited. What would make me feel human right now? The question hangs in the dark. No answer comes immediately. Her brain, trained for productivity, tries to supply options. Meditate. Journal. Read that book on your nightstand. But those feel like tasks. More items for the invisible to-do list that runs beneath her consciousness at all times. She waits, and then softly, from somewhere below the noise. Water. I want water. It's such a small want, such an unambitious want, not a goal, not an optimization, just thirst. Maya swings her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet find the cold floor. She stands, walks to the kitchen. The apartment is dark except for the blue glow of her router and the green standby light on the espresso machine. Her footsteps are quiet. The refrigerator hums. She opens the cabinet, takes a glass from the second shelf, the one she never uses because it is harder to reach than the first shelf, and fills it from the tap. Cold, clear, ordinary. She drinks, and for the first time in longer than she can remember, she tastes it, really tastes it. The mineral coolness against her tongue, the weight of it moving down her throat, the way her body says, "Thank you," in a language older than words. She stands there in the dark, barefoot on cold tile, drinking water from a glass she never uses, and she thinks, oh, this is what being alive feels like. The phone charger lives on the nightstand. It has lived there for 4 years. Maya bought it at the Apple store on North Michigan Avenue in September 2021, a few weeks after she moved into this apartment. She chose the spot deliberately, close enough to reach without sitting up, far enough that the cord didn't tangle in her sheets. She remembers feeling satisfied with this arrangement. Efficient. She has not reconsidered this arrangement in 4 years. At 7:03 a.m., her alarm rings. Her hand reaches for the phone, automatically. Muscle memory. Cue, routine, reward, 66%. But this morning something catches, a thread of awareness, thin as dental floss. Her hand stops halfway to the nightstand, fingers open, close, open again. She remembers the water. She remembers the taste. She remembers what it felt like to want something simple and give it to herself without negotiation. She does not pick up the phone. She lies there for 11 minutes, watching the gray December light shift across her ceiling. Ohio has disappeared. Just ceiling now, just morning. At 7:14, she gets up. She walks to the kitchen drawer where she keeps measuring spoons and takeout menus and birthday candles left over from a party she hosted in 2023. She opens it. She places her phone inside, face down, screen dark. She closes the drawer. The sound is softer than she expected. Just wood against wood. Just the click of the magnetic catch. She stands there for a moment, hand still resting on the handle. Her reflection stares back at her from the stainless steel refrigerator. Hair messy. No makeup. 29 years old, wearing pajama pants with a small hole in the left knee. Standing in her own kitchen, having just performed the most radical act of her adult life. She has not changed her environment. She has not bought a product. She has not signed up for a course. She just moved her phone 14 inches to the left. The resistance arrives at 7:48 a.m. She's dressed, bag packed, oat milk measured. Her keys are in her hand. She's at the door, and then her hand drifts toward the kitchen drawer. "This is stupid," says the voice. "It's just a phone. What if there's an emergency? What if work needs you? What if you miss something important?" Her fingers touch the handle. "You're being dramatic," says the voice. "This is what, day 3 of your little experiment? You think moving a phone fixes burnout? You think you're better than everyone else who just deals with it?" She doesn't open the drawer. She doesn't not open it. She just stands there, hand on the handle, suspended between the person she was and the person she doesn't know how to become. 3 seconds. Then she takes her hand away, opens the front door, and walks out. Her phone stays in the drawer. The L train is crowded at 8:15. Maya stands near the doors, holding the overhead rail, watching the city slide past. Gray sky, gray buildings, commuters packed shoulder to shoulder, each one staring down at a glowing rectangle. She has nothing to stare at. Her hands feel strange, empty. She tucks them into her coat pockets. Her fingers find a loose thread, a folded receipt, a single earbud that migrated there months ago. She pulls out the receipt. Walgreens, November 17th. Cough drops and toothpaste. She folds it back up, puts it away. The train emerges from underground, crossing the Chicago River. Morning light hits the water. It's not golden or dramatic. It's December, so it has more of a pale silver, but it catches the ripples and throws them back up at the sky in shifting patterns. Maya looks at the water. She just looks at it. No photo, no mental caption, no assessment of whether this moment is aesthetically shareable. Just water, just light. Just a woman on a train, watching the river pass beneath her. She doesn't know it yet, but this is the first time in 4 years she has looked at something without immediately translating it into content. Here is a statistic that surprised her when she read it later. In a 2025 study of adults who successfully broke a digital habit, 73% reported that their breakthrough moment was not a decision to quit. It was a decision to delay. Not "I'll never check my phone at night again." Just "I'll wait 10 minutes before checking it." 73%. The shift wasn't abstinence, it was space. A tiny gap between cue and routine. Small enough to feel meaningless, large enough to change everything. Maya's 10-minute wait stretched into an hour, then 2, then 4. At 12:15 p.m., during her lunch break, she opened the kitchen drawer. Her phone screen glowed with accumulated notifications: 14 unread messages, 3 emails, 2 Slack DMs, 1 news alert, 47 Instagram notifications. She looked at them. Then she closed the drawer and ate her sandwich. That evening, she texts her brother. Not a meme, not a one-word response, an actual sentence typed slowly, deleted twice, finally sent with her thumb hovering over the arrow before she pressed it. Hey, random question. Do you ever feel like you're performing being yourself? 3 dots appear, disappear, appear again. His response. Literally all the time. Why, you too. She stares at the screen. Her reflection stares back, soft and slightly distorted in the glass. Yeah. She types. Me too. Since when? He asks. She thinks about it. Since college? Since the pandemic? Since she got her first job and realized that competence and happiness are not the same thing? Since she stopped being able to distinguish between the person she is and the person she supposed to be? I don't know, she writes. A while. Well, he says. Welcome to the club. We don't have meetings. We just lie awake at 3 a.m. and think about it. She laughs. Actually laughs. Her neighbor's bass line pulses through the wall, and she laughs, and the sound surprises her. It's not polished. It's not performative. It's just noise escaping her chest. How do you deal with it? She asks. Have you ever felt like you're living 2 lives? The one you meticulously curate online, and the real one, the one that happens when the screen goes dark. I want to tell you a story about Maya. Her online life was a masterpiece of productivity and positivity. Her feed was a vibrant collage of early morning runs, perfectly brewed matcha lattes, and pages of underlined philosophy books. She was the picture of discipline, the kind of person who seemed to have it all figured out. But that was just one side of the story. The other life, the real one, started after the posts were made. It was a life lived in the blue glow of a screen, a life measured in endless scrolling and the hollow validation of likes. The reality was that Maya's meticulously crafted morning routine often crumbled before it even began. The alarm would go off at 5 a.m., but her hand, seemingly with a mind of its own, would reach for her phone. Just a quick check, she'd tell herself. But a quick check would spiral into an hour, then 2, of aimless scrolling. The sun would rise, casting long shadows across her room, a silent witness to her broken promises. The matcha latte? It was often cold by the time she got to it. The book? It remained on her nightstand, its wisdom locked away behind a barrier of digital distraction. Each night, she'd fall asleep with the phone in her hand, the last thing she saw before drifting into a restless slumber, and the first thing she reached for upon waking. It was a cycle, a relentless loop of intention and failure. She was addicted, not to a substance, but to the constant stream of information, the fleeting dopamine hits of notifications, the feeling of being connected yet profoundly alone. The digital world that was meant to be a tool had become her master, and her real life was paying the price. The turning point wasn't a dramatic rock-bottom moment. It was quieter, a slow, dawning realization. It came one morning when she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the tired, anxious person looking back. The vibrant online persona felt like a cruel joke. That day, she decided to do something different. She didn't delete her apps or throw her phone away. She knew that extreme measures would only lead to a rebound. Instead, she decided to just show up. What does it mean to just show up? For Maya, It meant putting on her running shoes, even if she didn't feel like running. It meant stepping outside, even if she only made it to the end of the street. The first day, she ran for 5 minutes before the urge to check her phone, to capture the moment, became overwhelming. She stopped, posted a picture of the sunrise with a caption about discipline, and then walked home, the feeling of failure heavy in her chest. But the next day, she showed up again. This time, she ran for 7 minutes. It was a tiny victory, almost invisible, but it was a start. This became her new practice, showing up day after day without the pressure of performance. Some days were good. She'd leave her phone at home and feel the cool morning air on her skin, hear the birds singing, and feel a sense of presence she hadn't experienced in years. On these days, she felt a crack of light breaking through the facade. She was reconnecting with a part of herself that had been dormant for so long. She started to notice the little things again, the way the light filtered through the leaves, the smell of rain on the pavement. But other days were hard. The pull of the digital world was strong. She'd find herself scrolling in bed, the familiar guilt washing over her, the temptation to perform, to post about her digital detox journey was immense. It was a battle fought in the quiet moments, a struggle that no one else could see. There were no trophies for resisting the urge to scroll, no applause for choosing a book over a screen. It was a lonely, difficult process. One evening, instead of opening Instagram, she opened the book that had been sitting on her nightstand for months. It was a collection of poems. She read one, then another. The words were quiet, but they resonated deeply. They spoke of solitude, of nature, of the simple act of being. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace that wasn't manufactured for an audience. It was real, and it was hers alone. She started to bring this practice of showing up to other areas of her life. She started meditating, not for a perfectly timed 10 minutes, but for as long as she could manage. Sometimes it was just 1 minute of focusing on her breath. But she showed up. She started journaling, not with clever captions in mind, but with honest, messy handwriting, pouring out her frustrations and her small wins. These were private acts of self-care, invisible to the online world. They were cracks in the performative armor she had built around herself, and through these cracks, light began to pour in. Her online presence started to change, too. It became less polished, less perfect. She posted less frequently. When she did post, it was more authentic. A picture of a half-finished run, a quote from a book she was actually reading. She was no longer trying to be a brand. She was just being a person. Some followers dropped off, confused by the shift, but others responded with encouragement and shared their own struggles. She was building a different kind of connection, one based on vulnerability rather than performance. The process was slow, and it wasn't linear. There were still days when she fell back into old habits, but the difference was that she no longer saw these moments as failures. She saw them as part of the journey. She learned to be kind to herself, to practice self-compassion. The goal was no longer perfection, it was presence. It was about choosing the real, messy, beautiful life over the curated, filtered one. Maya's story is a reminder that real change doesn't happen overnight. It's not about grand gestures or dramatic transformations. It's about the small, consistent effort of showing up for yourself, day after day. It's about creating tiny cracks in the habits that hold you captive and allowing the light to come in. It's about finding the courage to be imperfect, to be real, in a world that often demands the opposite. If you're struggling with this, know that you're not alone. The pressure to perform, to be constantly on, is immense. But your well-being is more important than your feed. Maybe your first step is as simple as putting your phone on the other side of the room tonight. Or maybe it's going for a 5-minute walk without it tomorrow morning. It doesn't have to be a big leap. It just has to be a step. Just show up for yourself. The rest will follow. And if you ever feel like the struggle is too much to handle on your own, please remember that reaching out for professional help is a sign of strength. There are people who want to support you on your journey. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.